The drifting survivor, the pod was silent except for the weak hum of failing systems. Lights flickered in short bursts, then dimmed again. Inside the small escape pod, an alien sat strapped to a broken seat, breathing heavy through a cracked mask. His name was Kale, and he had been drifting for days, lost in the endless dark of space. The stars outside looked peaceful, but for him, they were nothing but cold reminders that he was alone. His ship had been destroyed in an ambush, his crew scattered into the void, and he had been thrown into this tiny pod with almost no supplies. The oxygen gauge blinked red, dropping lower with every breath. Kale pressed his hand against the glass window of the pod. His claws tapped nervously as his mind tried to hold on to hope. He whispered to himself, voice weak and trembling, "Someone. Please, anyone." But space never answered. He tried to remember his home world, the mountains, the green rivers, the voices of his people, but the memories were fading. Hunger gnawed at him and thirst burned his throat. He had only a few drops of water left in a cracked container, and he had been saving them for when he could no longer bear it. Every sound inside the pod reminded him of death, the slow tick of the life support, the hiss of leaking air, the soft vibration of metal shifting in the cold. His eyes grew heavy, and for a moment he thought of giving up. Maybe it would be easier to close his eyes and let the stars take him. But then, beep. A sharp sound cut through the silence. Kale's eyes snapped open. The pod's old radar system had picked up something. A faint blip appeared on the cracked screen. At first he thought it was a trick. Maybe the system was failing, showing him ghosts. But the blip grew stronger, brighter, closer. Kale's heart raced. His claws shook as he reached for the communicator. Is someone there? His voice cracked. Static filled the pod. He slammed the panel with his fist, desperate. "Please, I am lost. Can anyone hear me?" The static roared back, then softened. A voice, strange, deep, and unlike any he had ever heard, spoke through the comm. "This is Vessel Horizon. Identify yourself." Kale froze. The voice did not belong to his kind. It was slower, rougher, more human. His people had told stories about humans, strange creatures from a distant world, dangerous, unpredictable. Some said humans were merciful. Others said they were ruthless. His throat tightened. Should he answer? Or would silence be safer? If he said nothing, the ship might pass him by. If he spoke, maybe they would help. Or maybe they would destroy him. The blip on the radar grew bigger. The ship was close now. He could see faint lights shining in the distance, cutting through the black. It was massive, far larger than his pod. Kale pressed the communicator to his chest. His people had abandoned him. His crew was gone. If he didn't take this chance, he would die here alone. His voice shook as he replied. "This is Survivor Kale of the Vayari people. My ship was destroyed. My pod is failing. I need help." For a long moment, silence. Kale's heart pounded like drums. Then the human voice returned. "Copy that, Kale. We have you on our scanners. Hold tight, we're bringing you in." Relief washed over him so suddenly that tears stung his eyes. But fear stayed close. What would these humans do with him? Would they treat him as a guest? Or a prisoner? The escape pod shuddered as a giant shadow fell over it. The human vessel loomed like a floating fortress, lights glowing across its surface. Metallic arms reached out, clamping onto the pod. Kale gripped the seat, claws digging into the worn fabric. The pod's hatch creaked, groaned, and finally unlocked. Bright light flooded inside, blinding him. Shapes moved in the glow, tall, broad figures in strange suits. They pulled the hatch open and leaned in. One of them spoke again, the same deep voice from the radio. "You're safe now. We've got you." Kale's vision blurred. His chest tightened. Safe? He wanted to believe it. But the stories, the warnings about humans, echoed in his head. As his strength gave way, he whispered a final thought to himself. Safe or captured? Darkness took him, but even in the silence, the human voices followed him, steady and strange, pulling him out of the endless void. The human vessel Kale woke to the sound of voices. His vision was blurred, the world spinning around him. For a moment he thought he was still in the escape pod, drifting through the void. But no, the air was cleaner, thicker, filled with the faint hum of strong machines. He blinked slowly, his eyes adjusting to the bright white lights above. He was lying on a flat bed inside a room he had never seen before. The walls were metal but polished, glowing faintly with blue strips of light. Strange symbols blinked on the panels around him, His body was covered with a thin sheet, and a mask pressed against his face, feeding him oxygen that was not his own. Then he heard it again. The voices. They were close now, deep and rough, speaking in a language he did not know. The sounds were sharp, harsh, and yet strangely steady. His mind struggled to catch meaning until he realized something shocking. The mask was translating. Every word became clear inside his head. "He's stabilizing," one voice said. "Vitals are steady now," another answered. Cale's chest tightened. These were humans. The stories had been true. He tried to sit up, but his body was weak. The sheet slipped, revealing his thin gray skin and sharp arms. Immediately, the voices stopped. Footsteps echoed as several figures moved closer. The first face he saw made his heart pound. A human leaned over him, tall, with dark eyes and a strong jaw. He wore a dark uniform with a bright patch stitched on the chest, blue with a white circle and stars. The man spoke softly, but his voice carried weight. "You are safe. Do not be afraid. Safe." The same word he had heard before blacking out. But what did it mean to humans? Safety could mean rescue or captivity. Cale forced his dry throat to work. Why help me?" His voice cracked. The human captain studied him with unreadable eyes. "Because you were dying." That answer struck Cale harder than any weapon. No politics. No bargains, just because he was dying. His people had always said humans were selfish, that they only fought for themselves. Yet here he was, alive because of them. Behind the captain, more humans gathered. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with suspicion. A woman whispered, "He's not like the files. He's smaller." Another muttered, "Still dangerous. Should we really trust him?" Cale's claws curled. He felt like a specimen under their eyes. He wanted to shout, to defend himself, but his body betrayed him, weak and trembling. The captain raised a hand, silencing the whispers. "Enough. He is under my protection." The words fell heavy, and the crew obeyed. Cale realized then, this human was their leader. As the minutes passed, they checked his vitals, gave him water, and adjusted his mask. The water was cold, clean, unlike anything he had tasted in days. It slid down his throat, and for the first time, relief replaced the burning hunger inside him. Still, he could not relax. His eyes darted around the room, scanning for threats. The humans' tools looked like weapons. Their eyes judged him, measured him. What did they want from him? The captain must have noticed, because he leaned closer and asked, "Do you understand where you are?" Cale swallowed. "Your ship." "Yes," the captain nodded. "Human vessel Horizon. You are safe here for now." Those last two words made Cale's blood run cold. For now. Did that mean his fate was undecided? He asked, voice shaking. "What will you do with me?" The room went quiet. The humans glanced at each other, but no one answered. Finally, the captain said, "That depends. Who are you running from?" Cale froze. Memories of the ambush returned. Enemy ships tearing through his vessel, his crew screaming before the explosion. He looked down, shame and sorrow heavy on him. "Raiders. They wanted us gone. I was the only one left." Murmurs spread among the humans. One of them spoke sharply. "Could be a trap. Maybe he's leading them to us." Another added, "We should put him in containment." Containment. The word stabbed through Cale like a blade. He was no criminal, no spy. He wanted to protest, but fear stole his voice. The captain studied him for a long moment, then finally said, "We will not harm him. But until we know more, he stays under watch." Cale closed his eyes. Relief and fear battled inside him. He was alive, but not free. He was saved, but not trusted. Hours passed. Cale lay in silence, listening to the distant rumble of engines. Humans walked in and out, checking on him, always staring as if he might break or attack. But when the room was empty, Cale turned his eyes to the ceiling, whispering softly to himself. "Am I rescued? Or captured?" Far beyond the walls, the human vessel drifted through space, carrying him deeper into a future he could not yet see. The first contact, Kyle sat up slowly, his thin arms trembling as he pushed against the bed. His body still felt weak, but his mind was sharper now. Every sound around him pulled his attention. The steady hum of engines, the faint hiss of doors sliding open and shut, the boots of humans echoing in the corridor outside. For the first time, he saw the humans clearly. They walked past the glass window of his room, tall and broad, their faces strange but expressive. Their eyes were small compared to his people's, but they carried a fire he had never seen before. Some faces were calm, some suspicious, and some curious, as if they were looking at a wild creature caged for study. Then the door hissed open. A group entered, led by the same captain who had spoken to him before. Behind the captain stood 2 guards in black uniforms, their weapons at the ready, though not raised. A woman with short hair held a small tablet, glowing with strange symbols. She looked at Kale with sharp eyes as if reading his very soul. Kale's claws dug lightly into the sheet. His people had always said that the first contact with humans was dangerous. Some claimed humans were warm-hearted saviors. Others swore they were conquerors who bent worlds to their will. He did not know which truth stood before him now. The captain spoke first. "Kale, can you understand me clearly?" Kale nodded slowly, his throat dry. "Yes, your device translates." The captain glanced at the woman, who gave a small nod. Then he returned his gaze to Kale. "Good, then we can talk." Kale's voice cracked with unease. "Talking about what?" The captain didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled a chair closer and sat down, leaning forward with his arms resting on his knees. His eyes were steady, focused. "About why you are here alone and why raiders were chasing you." Kyle felt his chest tighten. The truth burned in his throat, but fear silenced him. If he told them everything, would they believe him? Or would they throw him into a cell? The woman with the tablet spoke sharply. "If you lie, our systems will detect changes in your tone, your pulse, your eyes." "You will not fool us," Kale stiffened. His heart raced faster. Already the guards shifted slightly, their weapons humming faintly with energy. He felt trapped, like prey surrounded by hunters. But then, to his surprise, the captain raised a hand, stopping the tension from growing. His voice was calmer. "We are not here to harm you. But if you want our help, you must tell us the truth." Kale swallowed hard. His claws trembled against his legs. Finally, in a broken whisper, he said, "My people, we were attacked. Not just raiders. Something more. Ships larger than any we had seen. We tried to run, but they hunted us down. My crew, my family, all gone." The words cracked as they left his throat. His vision blurred, tears forming in his wide eyes. For a moment, the humans stayed silent. Even the guards looked unsettled. The captain's jaw tightened. "All gone?" Kale nodded weakly. "I drifted days, waiting to die until you came." Silence filled the room. The woman lowered her tablet, her expression softer now. One guard shifted his stance, uneasy. The captain leaned back, his eyes narrowing as he thought. Finally, he asked, "Do you know who they were? The ones who attacked you?" Kale shook his head slowly. "Not raiders. Too organized. Too many ships. They carried a symbol, a burning sun, red and black." At those words, the humans exchanged glances. The captain's expression darkened. The woman tapped quickly on her tablet, searching for data. The guards' grips tightened on their weapons. Kale noticed their reaction and felt a spike of fear. You know them?" The captain didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "What you saw, it matters to us, to many worlds." Kale tilted his head, confused. "Why, I am nothing. Just one survivor." The captain stood, his shadow falling across Kale. "Sometimes one survivor carries the warning that saves millions." The words struck Kale like a spark. He looked up, his heart pounding. For the first time, he saw something in the human's eyes that wasn't suspicion or calculation. It was resolve. But the moment didn't last. The woman with the tablet suddenly raised her voice. "Captain, we should secure him. If the enemy marked his pod, they could track us. Keeping him here is a risk." The guards shifted again, ready to obey. Kale's claws curled tighter, his chest filling with panic. Were they about to lock him away? The captain raised his hand sharply. "Enough, he stays with us. If the enemy comes, we'll deal with it." The woman looked displeased, but she obeyed. The guards lowered their weapons, though their eyes stayed fixed on Kale. Kale sat frozen, his heart thundering in his chest. He had just spoken his truth, but now he wondered. Had he brought danger onto this ship? Was he their guest or their burden? As the humans left the room, the captain stopped at the door and looked back at him. "Rest, Kale. Tomorrow we talk again." The door hissed shut. Kale was alone once more, but his mind was no longer drowning in despair. For the first time, he felt the weight of something larger than survival. His words had stirred the humans. His fate was tied to theirs now. But deep in his chest, a whisper of fear remained. What if the enemy that destroyed his people was already hunting this vessel? Whispers of war, the night cycle on the human vessel was quiet, but Kale could not sleep. The room they gave him was comfortable compared to the broken escape pod, but every sound of the engines made him uneasy. He was alive, yet he felt like a prisoner of fate. Through the thin wall, he sometimes heard footsteps. At other times, he caught muffled voices, humans talking in hushed tones as if trying to keep secrets. His translator mask caught fragments. Risk. Enemy fleets. Patrol lines. Hidden bases. The words crawled into his mind like shadows. Kale sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the metal floor. His claws tapped softly. He wanted to believe the captain's words, that he was safe, but fear gnawed at him. Humans were careful, but they did not hide their tension well. Something was coming. The door hissed open suddenly. Kale flinched. A human stood in the doorway, a young engineer with grease stains on his hands. He carried a small tray of food, bread, a bowl of something warm, and a cup of water. His eyes darted nervously as he stepped in. "Brought you something," the human said, placing the tray down. His voice was rough but not unkind. Kale stared at the food, then at the man. Why help me?" The human shrugged. "Captain's orders and—" "You look half dead." He gave a small grin, though his eyes carried worry. "Eat. You'll need your strength." Kale hesitated, then tasted the bread. It was strange, soft but warm. The flavor spread through him, and for a moment he felt alive again. He whispered softly, "Thank you." The engineer nodded, then leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You should know. Not everyone here trusts you. Some say you're a spy. Some say you'll bring death to us all." Kale's chest tightened. "And you? What do you believe?" The human hesitated, then sighed. "I believe you're just unlucky. But unlucky things can still get people killed." Before Kale could respond, an alarm blared in the distance. Red lights flashed faintly through the corridor. The engineer stiffened. "Stay here." He rushed out, leaving Kale alone with his pounding heart. Moments later, heavy footsteps echoed outside his room. Voices rose, no longer hushed. The translator caught sharper words now. Scout ships detected. Unknown signal. Possible trap. Kale pressed his ear to the wall, his claws trembling. He could almost picture the humans gathered in their command chamber. Screens glowing, maps filled with red markers. The enemy was near. The same symbol of the burning sun that had destroyed his people might already be hunting this vessel. Hours passed, or maybe only minutes. It was hard to tell in the endless dark of space. The door finally opened again, but this time it was the captain. His face was stern, shadowed by tension. "We need to talk," the captain said. Kale stood slowly, weak but alert. "You found them, didn't you?" The captain's eyes narrowed. "We picked up faint signals. Ships moving in patterns that don't belong here. They were too far for us to engage, but close enough to notice. And you—" His voice hardened. "They could be following you." Kale's claws curled. "I did not lead them here. I was running from them." The captain studied him carefully. For a long moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the hum of the engines. Finally, the captain said, "If you are telling the truth, then they are not just after you. They are spreading, hunting more than your people." Kale felt cold fear sink into him. "Then others will die." The captain nodded grimly. "Unless we stop them." At that moment, the woman with the tablet entered, her eyes sharp as always. She spoke quickly. "Captain, we can't afford to carry him any longer. If the enemy has marked him, we risk the whole crew. We should drop him at the nearest station." Kale's heart sank. He wanted to speak, to beg, but the captain raised his hand to silence her. "No, if what he says is true, he knows things. Things we don't. He stays." The woman scowled but obeyed. She left, her boots echoing down the hall. Kale sat back on the bed, his chest heavy. He could feel the weight of suspicion pressing down on him. Some humans saw him as a threat, others as a warning. The captain leaned closer, his voice lower. "Listen to me, Kale. If those ships are what I think they are, the galaxy may be heading for a war. And your survival might be the key to stopping it." Kale's eyes widened. Him? Just one survivor, weak and broken? How could he be the key to anything? But deep inside, a fire sparked. His people were gone, but maybe his survival meant something more than chance. Maybe fate had placed him here for a reason. The captain stood and moved toward the door. "Rest while you can. Tomorrow we plan. Because if war is coming, we won't face it unprepared." The door closed behind him, leaving Kyle in silence again. But this silence was different. No longer empty, no longer hopeless. It was heavy with whispers of war. War that was already on its way. Trussed on trial, Cale sat in the narrow chamber, his claws folded in his lap, the hum of the Horizon's engines filling the silence. The ship felt alive, a giant creature carrying him through the dark, but inside its walls he felt the stares of humans like knives on his back. Every step outside his room was guarded. Every glance was heavy with suspicion. He was no longer dying in a broken pod, but he was not free either. He was caught in something worse, a trial without chains, judged by eyes that did not trust him. The humans whispered when they passed. Spy. Bait. Enemy mark. Their words stung even when he pretended not to hear. That morning, the captain called him to the command deck. 2 guards escorted him, their weapons strapped to their chests. The door slid open, and Cale stepped into a room filled with glowing screens, maps of stars, and human officers busy at their stations. Every head turned when he entered. The captain stood near the central display, his arms crossed. His sharp eyes landed on Cale. We need answers, and this time you will give them clearly. Kyle swallowed hard. I have told you the truth. The woman with the tablet from before stepped forward, her voice like steel. Your truth is not enough. Our sensors picked up faint energy trails near us again. Enemy scouts. If they are following your signal, then you are the reason they are here. Murmurs spread across the room. Some officers nodded. One man muttered, He's a danger to the crew. Kyle's chest tightened. His claws tapped against his leg as he fought to stay calm. I did not call them. I am running from them. Why would I lead them here? The woman's eyes narrowed. Maybe to finish the job. Maybe you're the trap. The captain raised a hand, silencing the noise. His voice was calm but firm. Enough. We test his loyalty, not by words but by actions. Cale froze. Test? The captain pointed toward the lower decks. One of our engineers is trapped near the reactor bay. A coolant pipe burst. Dangerous radiation. My crew is working, but the systems are failing. If you truly wish to help, if you truly are not our enemy, then prove it. Cale's heart raced. Reactor bay? Radiation? He was weak, half-healed, still trembling from hunger. But he saw the eyes around him, doubtful, hostile, waiting for him to refuse. If he said no, they would lock him away forever. If he said yes, he might die. His claws curled into fists. I will go. The guards led him down to the reactor levels. The air grew hotter, thicker, filled with smoke and the sharp tang of metal. Red lights flashed along the corridor, alarms wailing. Human workers rushed past with tools, shouting orders. When they reached the bay, Cale saw the chaos. Sparks rained from the ceiling. A pipe hissed, spewing dangerous steam. In the middle of it, a young engineer lay pinned under debris, coughing weakly, radiation alarms screaming. The guards stopped at the door. One muttered, We can't go in. Too much exposure. Cale's chest heaved. He looked at the fallen human, his pale face twisted in pain. He had a choice, turn back, prove the doubters right, or step forward and risk his life for the same humans who feared him. He took a deep breath, then ran in. The heat slammed against him like fire. His skin burned, his lungs screamed, but he pushed on. He grabbed the metal debris, claws digging into the surface, and heaved with all his strength. Pain shot through his arms, but slowly the weight shifted. The engineer gasped as the pressure lifted. Cale dragged him free, supporting his weak body. The alarms wailed louder, the lights flashing dangerously. You'll die, the engineer whispered. Not today, Kyle growled, his legs trembling as he carried him toward the door. The guards rushed forward, pulling the engineer into their arms. They stared at Cale, shock in their eyes. His skin was burned, his body shaking, but he was still standing. Later, in the med bay, Cale lay weak but alive. The young engineer he had saved was beside him, breathing steadily thanks to treatment. Humans moved around them, quieter now, their eyes softer. For the first time, Kyle heard different whispers. Not spy, not bait, but words like brave and honor. The captain entered, his expression unreadable. He looked at Cale for a long moment, then finally said, You risked your life for one of mine. That speaks louder than anything else. Cale closed his eyes, exhaustion pulling at him. I told you, I am not your enemy. The captain's voice was low but firm. Then maybe you are something better. As Cale drifted into uneasy sleep, the whispers of mistrust faded. But outside the horizon, the enemy's shadow was still moving closer, ready to test them all. The enemy strikes. The horizon drifted through the void, its lights cutting across the black sea of stars. Inside, the crew worked in tense silence. They had grown quieter since Cale's trial. Some now looked at him with respect, others still with doubt, but all of them sensed something dark pressing in on the ship. It began with a faint sound, a long, low beep from the radar station. The officer at the console leaned forward, his face paling. "Captain." Multiple contacts. Closing fast. The air in the command deck turned heavy. The captain strode forward, his voice sharp. Confirmed. 12 ships. Formation, military, not raiders." Cale's claws dug into the railing where he stood, his breath caught in his chest. He didn't need to see the symbols, he already knew. "It's them," he whispered. The burning sun. The captain's eyes narrowed. "Battle stations. All hands prepare for engagement." Red lights flashed across the vessel. Alarms wailed through the corridors. Soldiers rushed to armories, engineers to control panels, pilots to their stations. The horizon shook as shields powered up, humming like a living beast ready to defend itself. Cale gripped the rail tighter. He had seen this before, the storm of war. He had lived through it once and lost everything. Now it was happening again, and this time, humans stood between him and the same destruction. The enemy ships emerged from the dark, their hulls black and red, glowing with the mark of the burning sun. They spread like wolves circling prey, weapons charging with deadly light. "Shields up," shouted the officer. "Target their lead," barked the captain. The horizon fired first. Brilliant beams of energy streaked across the void, smashing into one of the enemy's smaller ships. It broke apart in an explosion of fire, debris scattering like sparks in the night. But the victory was short. The enemy answered. Blazing bolts of plasma rained against the horizon's shields. The ship groaned, lights flickering as power surged. The deck rattled beneath Kyle's feet, throwing him against the rail. He clawed to hold steady as officers shouted around him. "Shields down to 80%. Port cannons overheating. Enemy boarding craft detected." Cale's blood turned cold. They weren't just attacking from outside, they were coming in. The captain's voice roared across the ship. "Repel boarders. Hold the line." Cale's claws trembled. He was no soldier of this vessel, no crewman sworn to its flag. Yet as the sounds of battle thundered around him, he felt the pull of something inside. These humans had saved him, fed him, trusted him enough to give him a chance. Could he watch them die? The ship jolted violently, throwing sparks from the ceiling. A boarding craft slammed against the hull, claws of metal digging in. The sound of cutting torches filled the corridor. Kyle turned to the captain. "Let me fight." The captain looked at him, eyes sharp. "You know their tactics?" Cale nodded, fire burning in his chest. "I know their weakness." The captain hesitated only a heartbeat before tossing him a weapon. Heavy, human-made, but solid in his claws. "Then prove it." The corridor filled with smoke as the enemy broke through. Tall figures in black and red armor stormed in, weapons blazing. Human soldiers fired back, the air thick with the roar of guns and the sizzle of energy blasts. Cale charged into the chaos. His claws slashed through an enemy soldier, his new weapon blasting another. The humans fought beside him, their shouts echoing, their lines holding. For the first time, he was not running, he was fighting back. But the enemy was strong. They pushed hard, step by step, forcing the humans back. Cale saw their pattern, the way they moved like hunters. His eyes narrowed. He shouted above the noise. "They focus on the center. Break their line on the left." The captain heard him. "You heard him. Left flank, push now." The humans obeyed, their fire cutting through the enemy formation. The line wavered, then broke. The boarders stumbled, retreating back toward their breach. Cheers rose from human throats as the tide turned, but outside the battle was far from over. The horizon shuddered under another barrage. Alarm screamed, "Hull breach on deck 7. Fire and engineering. Shields at 40%. Cale's chest heaved as he wiped blood from his claws. He looked at the captain, his voice ragged. "If you don't strike now, they'll tear this ship apart." The captain's jaw tightened. "Then where do we strike?" Cale's mind raced. He had seen the burning sun fleet before, studied their moves while running from death, and he remembered one truth. Their center was always strong, but their wings were fragile. "Hit their flanks," Cale said firmly. "Draw them in, then crush them." The captain stared at him for a moment, then nodded. Helm, bring us around. Gunners, prepare to focus fire on their left wing. Make them bleed. The horizon turned, engines roaring, weapons blazing. Kale held his breath as the humans followed his plan. For a moment, the void lit up with fire and destruction, the enemy ships crumbling under the sudden strike. But the battle was not done. More ships closed in, their weapons charging. The horizon shook again, its lights dimming, its shield screaming under the strain. Kyle's claws tightened on his weapon. The humans were brave, but bravery alone might not save them. He knew something else, something dangerous that could decide the fight. But using it would reveal secrets he had never told anyone. As the enemy circled closer, Kyle whispered to himself, "Do I dare?" The answer was drowned in another blast as the horizon plunged deeper into the fire of war. Humanity's hand, the horizon groaned like a wounded beast. Alarms screamed across every deck, red lights flashing in every corridor. The enemy's burning sun fleet pressed harder, their weapons pounding the human vessel's shields until sparks rained from the ceiling. Kyle staggered along the command deck, gripping his weapon with trembling claws. His body burned with exhaustion, his skin scarred from the reactor rescue, yet his mind was sharper than ever. He had seen these battles before, lived through the slaughter of his people. He knew what was coming. "They're closing in," shouted an officer. "Shields at 15%. The captain slammed his fist on the console. "We can't hold like this." Kale's chest tightened. He could feel the weight of every eye on him again, some still doubtful, some desperate. He had a choice. Reveal what he knew, risk their suspicion again, or let the horizon fall as his own people had. He stepped forward. "I know how to break them." The command deck fell silent. The captain turned sharply, his eyes hard. "Explain." Kale's claws dug into the console as he spoke, his voice steady despite the chaos. "The burning sun fleets fight with discipline. Their strength is the center. But their commanders, they hide at the edges. If you strike there, you don't just wound them, you scatter them. Without command, they panic." The woman with the tablet narrowed her eyes. "And how do you know this?" Kale's voice cracked, but he held her gaze. "Because I watched them destroy my world. I saw how they moved. I saw how they broke us. And I survived long enough to learn." The room was quiet for a heartbeat. Then the captain gave a sharp nod. "Helm, adjust course. Target their command ships. All batteries, prepare to fire." The crew snapped into motion, fueled not by orders alone, but by something deeper, hope. The horizon roared as it turned, its cannons blazing. Energy beams streaked across the void, striking the leftmost command vessel. The enemy ship exploded in a burst of fire, fragments scattering through the dark. Kale's chest heaved. It was working. "Enemy formation destabilizing," shouted the officer. "They're pulling back." But the enemy was not done. The second command vessel moved forward, desperate to restore control. It launched a swarm of fighters that swirled around the horizon like angry hornets. Explosions rocked the hull. The captain barked orders, humans shouting as they fought to keep the shields alive. Kale gripped his weapon tighter, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The enemy swarm was strong but reckless. If the horizon could endure just a little longer, the plan would break them. The ship shook violently, throwing Kale against the rail. Pain shot through his side, but he forced himself up. "Don't retreat," he shouted. "Hold the course." The captain met his eyes across the chaos and gave a single nod. Then with one final volley, the horizon's cannons tore through the second command ship. It split apart in a blaze of red and black, fire blooming in the endless dark. For a moment silence fell. Then the enemy formation shattered. Ships broke rank, fleeing in all directions. Their discipline was gone, their unity broken. The burning sun fleet, once a wall of death, dissolved into scattered embers. Cheers erupted across the horizon. Officers shouted in triumph. Soldiers pounded their fists on consoles and voices cried out, "We did it!" Kale sank to his knees, his claws trembling. For the first time since the destruction of his people, he saw the enemy retreat. Not invincible. Not eternal. Just broken like any other foe. The captain placed a hand on his shoulder. "You saved us." Kale looked up, his eyes wide. "No, we saved each other." The captain's mouth curved into the smallest of smiles. "Maybe you're right." In the days that followed, the horizon moved slowly through safer space, its crew repairing wounds, its people finding rest. Cale walked the corridors no longer under guard, but as a companion. The humans still whispered when he passed, but their words had changed. No more spy, no more danger. Now they said, fighter, friend, one of us. One evening, Kyle stood at the viewing deck. The stars stretched endlessly, silent and cold, yet different now. Not empty, not hopeless. The reflection in the glass showed him scarred, weary, but alive, and not alone. The captain joined him, arms crossed as he gazed at the stars. Where will you go now, Kyle? When we reach port, you'll be free to choose. Cale's claws tapped softly against the glass. For the first time in his life, he did not fear the question. My people are gone. But perhaps my future is here, with humans. The captain studied him for a moment, then nodded. Then you'll have a place on my ship. Kyle turned, his chest heavy with emotion. Why trust me now? The captain's voice was calm but firm. Because when the galaxy needed it, you stood with us. And because humanity remembers those who stand beside them. Cale looked back at the stars, his heart steady. He was no longer just a drifting survivor. He was part of something greater, a crew, a fight, a family bound not by blood but by choice. In the silence of space, the horizon carried them forward. And for the first time since the fall of his world, Cale believed in tomorrow, not lost, not alone, found by humanity's hand.